Welcome on in another edition of Sideline to Sideline. I'm Pete Mundo, Matthew Postins, Cameron Brock joining us this week from Heartland College Sports. And guys, a pretty fun week one, unless you're a Big 12 fan, which we all are. So let's talk about this week one and the disappointment. We'll start with the bad news, then we'll get to the good news. The bad news, of course, Baylor, Texas, West Virginia. Matthew, what did you make of those three teams and their specific losses and how this all went down?
Well, I don't think the loss for West Virginia is that bad. I mean, they played a very good Virginia Tech team. They put up over 500 yards of total offense on a defense that was ranked top 20 last year and looks like it could be ranked that way again. And their defense played okay. I mean, they made some mistakes, but ultimately it was a close game between two rivals that were renewing their rivalry for the first time in about 15 years. In a packed house at a neutral site where both teams made that place their own for one night. It was a great atmosphere, and I don't think that defeat for them is that bad. The two things they have to work on now is they have to get more depth defensively, because Tony Gibson mentioned they only played 14 guys on defense, and that won't work over a 12-game schedule at an FBS-level team. And they got to get Justin Crawford more playing time. I mean, they only had him run the football 13 or 14 times. He's a game breaker. He might be the best game breaker in the conference. They've got to get him the football more often.
Now, you were at that game, and you were right near that pass interference call at the end, which I know a lot of West Virginia fans want to say it was uncatchable. Cam, we were actually having this conversation. Cam is in that group of uncatchables, but you were right there. No doubt it was PI. I mean, right? There was no doubt about it.
No, I was looking at the play through my camera lens, and to me the problem isn't so much that the football was uncatchable. It might have been uncatchable, but the West Virginia defender pushed the guy out of bounds before the football even got there. I mean, you still got to give the receiver an opportunity to try and catch the football.
No doubt. Cam, make the case. Why is it uncatchable?
Well, it was going towards more of the fence line than it was going towards the sideline. I mean, you have to be Yao Ming and have the ability to jump as high as, I don't know, name any NBA player to make that catch. It was completely out of his range.
Okay. All right, Cam, what your thoughts on what exactly happened in week one for the Big 12 and what it does for this conference moving forward?
30% of the teams lost, and so 70% of the teams won. Sure, there were a lot of teams that were lackluster. Obviously, Sooners fans were upset with our power rankings because they crushed UTEP, but UTEP only defeated Charlotte, Rice, what are the teams that they beat was Rice last year, and who else? No, they lost to Rice, and Rice defeated Charlotte and Prairie View A&M on top of that. So I mean, come on, it's UTEP. It's a Conference USA team. They're not very good. Give it a rest, Oklahoma. You have your chance this week to move up the rankings against Ohio State.
No, I was going to say, on those rankings, you and I voted West Virginia at the top, or I had them 1 or 2. You had them 1 or 2. Matthew, I think, had them 3, and Dave and Derek had them around 3. So we have them. It averaged out, so we had Oklahoma 3. It was a really slim margin. And the OU fans are freaking out on Facebook and Twitter like we voted them the worst team in the Big 12. I could not believe how childish it was. I love OU fans. I covered them for 2.5 years. I lived there. I love OU fans. But that was crazy, Cam. That was absolutely nuts.
No doubt about it. I had West Virginia at number 3 behind Oklahoma State and TCU. And the only reason they were at number 3 was because they lost. And they lost to a very terrific Virginia Tech team who will probably compete in the ACC this year. And as for Texas, I had them 6 in front of Tech, Kansas. I think I had them in front of Iowa State, and of course Baylor. And the reason is I thought Texas, Maryland, I'm giving them more respect than everyone else is giving them. I think Maryland is in a good Big Ten conference. I don't see them competing for a Big Ten title, but I think they can make a bowl game.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And anyone that really follows college football like we do, but maybe the average Big 12 fan doesn't realize that team has recruited really well under DJ Durkin the last couple of years. So, Matthew, what was the most impressive performance for you week 1 in the Big 12?
Well, looking at that TCU-Arkansas game coming up, the fact that TCU's defense only gave up 54 total yards to Jackson State, I don't care that it's an FCS school. They're still Division I. That's pretty impressive. I mean, when I talked to a couple of the TCU defenders at Big 12 Media Days, they talked about the kind of standard that they play at defensively and the standard that Gary Patterson expects, and it's pretty much perfection. If they're going to play defense at that level the whole season, they're going to be a contender in this thing all the way through. And I think it kind of set a tone for them going into this Arkansas game this weekend. I think they're going to give Arkansas a really good game defensively based solely on what I saw against Jackson State.
Yeah, and Matthew, there's this really good stat I remember seeing that every year Gary Patterson has had a non-winning season at TCU. He's bounced back with double-digit wins. So it seems like when he's counted out or you don't know if Gary Patterson's going to do it, his team's bounce back in a big way. So maybe this is that kind of year. I don't know about you. I still don't trust Kenny Hill. And this Saturday game is going to tell me a whole lot about what this team can potentially do this season.
Yeah, this is a guy in Gary Patterson who, when they were in the Mountain West and Conference USA, he would take 2- and 3-star guys and he would turn them into 4- and 5-star guys. And now he's at the point where he's getting 3- and 4-star guys and he's turning them into 4- and 5-star guys. So, the way he coaches, the way he develops players is, in my opinion, completely underrated. And I think that the player development, you saw it against Jackson State. They played 10, 12 different receivers, 10, 12 different running backs. They didn't even have Hicks. He didn't even play in the game due to an injury. He's going to play Saturday, or at least he should play on Saturday. You put him in that lineup, and they could be something really awesome to watch on both sides of the football.
Yeah, and just quickly on that game too, like if TCU goes out there after what happened this past weekend for the Big 12, if TCU, who's now ranked, goes out there and loses to a team like Arkansas that is good but may finish near the bottom of the SEC West, that would just be another tough look for this conference.
Yeah, I think it would. I mean, I think this is an opportunity. They got 2 opportunities this weekend to really make a statement. Mm-hmm. Building on our conversation last week and talking about whether or not the Big 12 is a conference or a college football playoff conference. We've got Oklahoma playing Ohio State on the road. You got TCU playing Arkansas on the road. That Oklahoma OU game, Oklahoma Ohio State game was not close last year, but that TCU Arkansas game went to overtime in Fort Worth. So I'm really interested to see how the Horned Frogs respond to that opportunity to make a statement on the national stage. And same way for Oklahoma too. They've got an opportunity, I think, because Ohio State won and they won handily, but they didn't look that impressive, at least not to start that game against Indiana.
That's very true. Cam, when you look, I'm not sure how much you followed that, either the Ohio State game last week against Indiana. People are saying, is Ohio State vulnerable after that game? I looked at that as just a perfect storm where Indiana, it was their Super Bowl. They had game day there. It was the home opener, Ohio State. And it was a perfect scenario for Ohio State to go in and struggle, especially breaking in a whole new secondary, some new skill position guys. I think that Ohio State team is going to be far better this weekend than the one we saw last week, especially now with 9 days to prepare for OU.
If you're going to beat Ohio State in the regular season, you're going to do it in week 1, which Virginia Tech did a couple of years ago, which was pointed out by Texas's Tom Herman this week. So Ohio State, Urban Meyer, I mean, if there's Bill Snyder is the only coach I can think of who is actually a better coach. Nick Saban's more of a recruiter guy. Yeah, I think Ohio State has this one in the bag. And Oklahoma, I'm going to give them all the respect in the world if they can stick within single digits.
Now, 2 things. First off, Tom Herman, I don't know if you saw this today. He also said today, he made that Virginia Tech reference the other day after their loss. Today he said, look at what Nick Saban's first year was like at Alabama. They went 7-6, and the rest is history. I don't know what this guy is smoking, eating, or drinking, but I want a little bit of it, Cam, just a little bit.
I certainly want some too. And Nick Saban, he doesn't do too well against spread offenses, though.
That is true. He was the guy. It was actually him and Bielema who wanted to get rid of the spread a couple years ago. Or what was that whole deal? Right? Didn't they want to get rid of no huddle or something like that?
They wanted to get it to a point where you had at least 10 or 15 seconds to get your defense set before they wanted to be. I think they wanted it to be where you couldn't run a play within 10 seconds of the last play ending.
That's what it was. All right. So I think the 3 biggest games this week. Let's just kind of roll through and make our picks on what I think are the three biggest games this week, at least in terms of intrigue in the Big 12. We'll start off with Iowa State, Iowa, just the rivalry, what that means. I don't know if Iowa State can pull this one off at home. I certainly think they're far better than the last year, but I still think they're probably going to come up as a touchdown to 10 points short. How do you guys feel about that one?
I think Iowa State pulls off the upset, and here's why. Iowa has an inexperienced quarterback who only attempted 15 passes last week, and so Iowa is one-dimensional. And if you stop the run game and you force Iowa to pass, then you've seen the secondary. Iowa State had two pick sixes last week and 3 interceptions in the first few possessions. I like Iowa State's chances in this one.
All right, Matthew.
I think you got to throw in the fact they don't have Des King anymore in the secondary. That gives them a big hole in their back line. God, I really want to take Iowa State because I think Matt Campbell really has that program pointed in the right direction, and winning that Cy-Hawk trophy would be a big deal for that program this early in the season. But I think I'm going to take Iowa.
Yeah, I don't like it, but I feel like you got to take them by a touchdown or so. All right, the other biggest game in the Big 12 this week, Kansas State and Charlotte. Just kidding. Let's go to TCU, Arkansas. Matthew, you are gonna be at this game, TCU, Arkansas. You have had a great slate of games so far. West Virginia game last week. You'll be at the TCU game this week. Are you going to Kirk Herbstreit us and not pick the game because you're going to be there, or can you give us a prediction?
No, I'll give you a prediction. The road team took this game in overtime last year, so I'm going to take TCU in this one. I think the big difference was they got banged up early last season on defense, and they had some guys defensively that they would have had for that Arkansas game had they not been injured. So they seem to be completely healthy. They get Hicks back to lead their backfield. I just feel like TCU is going to go in with a chip on their shoulder. And when you have a Gary Patterson team with a chip on their shoulder, they tend to do good things. So I'll take TCU on the road.
All right. Cam, fire away.
I'm taking TCU as well. I think, like y'all mentioned, the double-digit win statistic after a losing season. He's got a stellar defense, 63-0 against Jackson State. I don't care what you say about Jackson State, but Arkansas was only up 21-7 at halftime against Florida A&M. You look at those two teams, both historically black colleges from FCS schools, and Arkansas, if I'm a Razorback fan, I'm really frightened here because I'm losing a non-conference game and going in the SEC play with a loss.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you guys. I like TCU 38-31 in that game. All right, the biggest one, of course, prime time, Oklahoma taking on Ohio State in the Horseshoe. Cam, we'll go right back to you. Prediction time.
It's Ohio State. I mean, I said it earlier. If Oklahoma can stay within double digits, if they can stay within 14 points, really, I'll be super impressed because Oklahoma has just lost so much. They're really rebuilding, which, if you think about it, is quite amazing because it's more of a reload. But those guys are so inexperienced against a top-notch Ohio State team with an Urban Meyer as head coach. Ohio State's going to compete for the college football playoff. Oklahoma, they're 1 year away still.
Yeah, Matthew?
Yeah, I'm going to have to take Ohio State. I mean, Urban Meyer can coach his way out of a paper bag. I mean, that's just the way it is. He's got better recruits right now than Oklahoma does, and he's going up against a coach in Lincoln Riley that I like, but he's making his second game as a collegiate head coach. It's just a recipe for maybe a close game, but not quite enough for the Sooners in this one.
I'm with you guys. I mean, think about, and you mentioned it, Cam, how last year's game was all Ohio State. That was with Joe Mixon, Samaje Perine, and D.E. Westbrook, who are all in the NFL right now. I'm sorry. I can't see it. Never mind, you're on the road this year. Everyone talks Baker Mayfield. He's great. I don't see this one. If they keep it within 10 points, that's a win for the Sooners. There's no doubt about it. Guys, I know, Cam, you've got an NFL, you got a fantasy football draft. Who's your first pick going to be before we go?
Well, it's an auction bid, so I have no clue who my first pick is.
Oh, jeez.
Auction pick. Jeez, you're really heavy into this stuff, huh?
I am.
Oh, gosh. All right.
Those auction drafts can take forever.
Yeah, have fun with that. We'll see you in the morning.
Thanks.
Cam, Matthew, we'll take care, guys.
All right, thanks, Pete.
For Pete Mundo, Matthew Possins, Cameron Brock, it's been Sideline to Sideline, HeartlandCollegeSports.com. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube. Check it out, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere else, HeartlandCollegeSports.com.